There have been some epic superhero team-ups over the years, but there have also been some really strange ones. This was a fun list to write because a lot of these team-ups I never knew existed or even could ever exist. But here they are. The top 10 weirdest superhero team-ups. At number 10, we have Batman and Sherlock Holmes. This is the one that probably makes the most sense on this list, believe it or not, because the original Batman has always been a detective above everything, with his original comics actually being called Detective Comics. This adventure is actually number 572 of that comic series, and the pairing somehow just seems weirdly right. The only thing is that the Sherlock Holmes stories typically take place in the 1800s, well before Batman's time. So the way they make this work is by just simply having Sherlock be super duper old, over 100 years old actually. It works well enough, I guess. The plot is basically that Batman is facing a challenge trying to take down Moriarty and takes Sherlock's help to solve the issue. This is back in the day when Batman was still pretty peppy and fun, bringing Robin along for the ride and everything, so the pair-up kind of works in tone as well. It's a fun little moment in time that brings one of the most influential detectives of one era and pairs him up with one of the most influential detectives of this era. All this considered though, it's still weird, and I needed to put it on the list. At number 9, we have X-Men vs Star Trek. This is a very weird pairing because Marvel could have easily paired up Star Trek with another team that's more synonymous with space travel, like, you know, the Guardians of the Galaxy. But on the other hand, the X-Men do always show an interest in teaming up with and supporting humans, and they sometimes do go into space, so it sort of works. Relatively speaking, that is, in comparison to what else you'll see on this list later. But all in all, this team up is pretty fun, showing off some fun traits of both teams, like Spock using the Vulcan pinch on Wolverine before they become friendly with one another. But the fun and games subside when the teams are tasked with taking on the threat of the mutant Proteus. This team up actually worked well enough when it was released that they even got a few sequels, so there's that. At number 8, we have Batman and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yes, this team up actually happened. When Shredder comes to Gotham and teams up with Ra's al Ghul and they try and, you know, take over the world together, Batman naturally enters the picture. But so do the 4 Ninja Turtles. The contrast between this darker, more modern Batman and the very fun but very annoying Ninja Turtles makes for a funny combination that is known to actually be pretty good, all things considered. And something about this team up actually does feel right for some reason. Maybe it's the setting of Gotham seeming like it fits for the Turtles, and maybe also something about the dynamic of these characters. Batman does seem like the perfect straight man to the silliness of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Regardless, it is weird, but fun, but weird, but fun, and needed a spot on the list. At number 7 is Superman and the Nesquik Bunny. So as we go deeper into the list, things are getting a little weirder, yes. This one strikes me as bizarre for sure, but also somewhat fitting considering cereal companies love to pair characters from pop culture with their brands. But still, that's the only slack I'm gonna cut it. It's sort of weird that there is an actual comic book about it because it sort of messes with the canon of Superman. But alas, it happened, and it was bananas. Basically just a really long ad for cereal and a pretty weak plot. The villain in this one is Weather Wizard, and somehow Superman has genuine trouble taking him down. So who does he call? A group of young children and a rabbit. And even after their victory, there's a chocolate milk chugging challenge that Superman somehow even loses to the bunny. It's just a bizarre journey of sellouts and awkward writing, but I live for things like this that shouldn't exist but do. It just makes things more fun. At number 6, there's Batman and Scooby Doo. Another strangely fitting pairing. This comic made me realize just how many detective characters there actually are out there, and why they keep insisting on teaming up with one another. In this team up, the villain is Man-Bat, which is actually a great choice because he's one of the few Batman villains that's actually a monster, which fits with the Scooby Doo brand. But this weird match actually isn't the last time people see the Scooby Doo franchise work its way into the comic book world. Later on, Scooby Doo will eventually become a sidekick to Ace the Bat Hound and continue to solve crimes alongside him. Although I'll be honest, I haven't checked out how those issues looked. Couldn't imagine them being able to fit in anything too dark with Scooby Doo around, you know? They should never have to know the violence that takes place on the streets of Gotham. At number 5 is a weird one for sure. The Avengers actually team up with the Guardians of the Galaxy to face off against Titans from the Attack on Titan universe. This issue is called Attack on Avengers, naturally, and it's a super short 8 pages long. Basically, the plot is that the Titans just show up in New York City and start causing problems. Problems like eating people, you know? What I find strange about this, aside from the obvious, is that the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy pair up in the first place. I feel like it's already a complicated enough concept to have the Avengers versus Attack on Titan, but then they just go and complicate it even further, which is just strange. It doesn't get in the way of it, it's just weird. It's known to be a pretty fun read though. It doesn't go deep into any complex plot or anything, it just sort of has the heroes show off their abilities one after the other to take down the Titans. It's unclear who wins the battle though, with the issue just kind of ending with the Guardians of the Galaxy tapping in to do some Titan killing of their own. At number 4, we have a personal favorite of mine, The Punisher teaming up with Eminem. When I found out this team up took place, I was so happy. It's just such a good fit given their darker personalities, and makes me like Eminem more that he'd even go for something like this. This comic came out back in 2009, the same year that Eminem released his Relapse album, just for context for all you Eminem fans out there. The plot is pretty simple, with Barracuda being the villain in the comic that the two team up to take down. The strange part of this issue, other than the part where Eminem and the Punisher are teaming up, is a decision which I think was a bit of a misstep, and it's that Eminem is totally OP. He beats up the Punisher before they even team up for one, which I guess gives Eminem a pretty impressive power stat canonically, and then when they're kidnapped by Barracuda and taken to the Arctic to be killed, Eminem breaks free and saves the Punisher, killing Barracuda with a chainsaw in the process, which sort of weakens the integrity of the Punisher just to boost Eminem. I feel like they could have easily played with Eminem's funny personality a little more and had the two characters play off each other to give us a more humble and dynamic story. But maybe Eminem just said yes to this gig so he could look cool, and somehow even more badass than the Punisher. At number 3, we have Superman teaming up with Bugs Bunny. You heard me correctly. This team up could also just as easily be considered a DC Comics and Looney Tunes crossover, but out of all the different characters from both franchises, Bugs and Superman are two of the more significant characters who end up associating with one another, which is just a bonkers duo to have teamed up in the first place. The way that these worlds collide is that Mxyzptlk and Yo-Yo the Dodo basically just manipulate reality to make the pair up happen for fun, which I guess is the only real way to justify something as weird as this. They don't really do much as a pair, but you can imagine that Bugs just kind of wanders around and quips while Superman tries to figure out how to get him to focus. There's more to it than that, I'm sure, but honestly you'd have to pay me to actually read all the way through this thing. No offense if this is a favorite of yours, I don't know. I saw the cover and I couldn't do it. At number 2 is kind of a part 2 to number 3, if that sentence made any sense. It's Batman and Elmer Fudd. This is just the most bizarre team up, again, with the very loose through line that they're both sort of detectives. Elmer is a hunter, but he's usually like creeping around looking for Bugs Bunny clues and stuff. Either way, this issue is actually known to be strangely good and suspenseful, considering what it is. It has Elmer Fudd partaking in a dark noir storyline on the hunt for a mysterious killer known as the Bunny. But things keep getting more complicated for Fudd when Batman turns out to be the real culprit. Believe it or not, this is a different storyline from the previous entry, which just makes me wonder how the hell Looney Tunes and DC Comics kept thinking it would be a smart idea to give their characters crossovers. Although, it seemingly worked for people. People seem to like this one with Elmer Fudd, so maybe they were onto something. At number 1 is a very, very strange one. Batman and the Beatles, or the copyright-free version of the Beatles anyway. This one doesn't seem to have any common thread to tie these two pop culture worlds together. I really tried to think of one, but I just couldn't. Maybe the writer was just a big Beatles fan and wanted an excuse to get in touch with Paul McCartney's people if he needed to. Maybe they were safe from copyright, because they don't really look like them. I mean, to be fair, the plot of the comic is about as clever as it could have been given the pairing. Batman is basically trying to investigate whether or not Paul of the Beatles is actually dead. For those of you who don't know, there was a fan-generated rumor years ago floating around about the idea that Paul had actually died and was secretly replaced by a guy named William Campbell. So this ridiculous theory is what Batman is trying to get to the bottom of. And what ends up happening, spoiler alert, is that Batman actually discovers it was the other members of the band who were the fake, and that Paul was the only original member of the band remaining, which is It's riveting stuff. And super bizarre, perfectly bizarre. So that was the list. Are there any strange team ups that I missed? I would genuinely love to know, so leave it all down in the comment section below and I'll try and answer you. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and follow me on Instagram if you want. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I've been your host, Ben Ball. See you next time.